we're going to take a sort of a journey tonight. And my words, this discussion, this talk will be like a map. And so right now, you're finding out where you are currently. It's the terrain that is easy to be aware of. You can feel your sit bones on the chair, your feet on the floor. Feel the air of the room. Maybe your palms of your hands are on your legs. You're connecting to the phenomenological world, the world of the senses. Hear my voice through your ears. You can think of this as ground zero. You don't have to be pulled out in any direction. You just let the world come in through the senses, and you find yourself right here. The journey we're going to go on, this map that we're going to use, is from this world that we find of ourselves right here, of the five senses, into or out of or within. You can put the word on it that makes most sense to you. Beyond the five senses, from the gross to the subtle, from the material to the energetic. So right here, begin to feel as though you're pulling away from, pulling inward from. You can still hear the words, you can still feel the air of the room, but you're withdrawing your sense receiver, where all the senses go into. Maybe you feel it inside the body somewhere, you give it a location, feel it descend into the body more. Think of it geometrically. You go from the head down into the center of the rib cage, the heart. And it's from this place. It's almost as if you had a deeper knowledge receiver here, a new way of taking in information outside of the five senses. It's from this place that we'll try and listen tonight and absorb the information. And hopefully make the leap from information to knowledge. You just feel the being residing inside the rib cage. Take a deep breath and feel as though you're starting to stretch out. As you breathe, it'll help you embody this idea. As you breathe, you stretch out, almost like tendrils, reaching out from the center of your heart, the center of your rib cage, trying to grab hold of the world beyond the five senses. Okay, you can open your eyes when you're ready. When you look out, instead of looking out from right behind here, you feel yourself come up from the heart, out through the eyes. We have a latecomer guest. Did you use your 5 senses to figure that out? Or to such extent? Hi. That's okay. What's your name? Jessica. Have a seat.
I just got over Joe's training.
Good to see you.
Me too.
So just to fill you in, we just took a journey from to think about where we're going here tonight. From this 5 sense reality, well, we can even start to label it here. 5 sense reality. And you can think of it as going down, going within, or even rising above to a, if you can call this the gross world, the gross or material, and into the subtle. So, what is it then? Where are you getting it from? Where do you perceive it from? If you can't touch, it's not your touch, if it's not the sense of touch, it's not the sense of sight, it's not the sense of hearing, what is it? And that's where I like to think of it as the purely subjective experience. We've almost created it. We've projected it out of ourselves. Just like we reach out with our ears. We reach out with these subtle parts of ourselves. And that creates our world. The world as we know it. It's pretty far out stuff just to think about that. Like you're creating it. Now I'm not saying that we created this floor, we created the cars outside, so much as we created the way we perceive those things. The judgments about cars, the judgments about concrete. Right now we start to see, oh yeah, I do have opinions about concrete. I have opinions about oil. I have opinions about sitting in a car. Those things, where do those come from? What decides those? That is based on what I think is the subtle body. That the relationship to the external world is not, I go through my life and I'm sort of this, victim's not the right word, but I'm this sort of, I receive, it's happenstance. I connect to this world by what's going on happening into me. So much as that we come into it, whether it's genealogical, and then we create impressions through our parents, their impressions on us. But on a even farther out level, maybe we'll get into that at some point, but the soul, or whatever we're defining that as, the energetic of your being, came in with a little bit of a apprehension to certain things. And so it's kind of like modern day astrology, where we go to an astrologer and they tell us, okay, you're this type of person, you behave this way, you have an aversion for these types of things. It's like, why? Because the stars were spinning around and they made us up that way? Or did it impress upon us a certain code, a certain map, and then we relate to the world from that map? Now, so there's the things that we're comfortable with and the things that we're uncomfortable with. And everyone's unique and everyone's different. And when you start to study the subtle body, when you start to investigate that inner plane, what you're doing is, in my experience, is creating a balance between what you're uncomfortable with and what you're comfortable with, what you know, what you don't know, what you prefer, what you don't prefer, your sukha and dukkha in Sanskrit. And you start to get a lighter sense, a lighter touch on things. The subtle body is this illusory, wave-like place. It's a very big, expansive place, and the concrete world is very hard and dense and small. And so when you get up into this big, wave-like, expansive world, you get a little bit lighter with things. That's why it's called the subtle body. Those hard opinions that we have about certain things can be opened up. And when they get opened up, you can learn to let go of them, make it a little bit easier. So what we're going to do tonight is talk about the different areas of the body which make the things that we want to turn into rock solid things. They're either good for us or bad for us, or we're not really sure what they are for us, but they're definitely there in our physical world, our physical life, and we're maybe not sure how to deal with them. We can turn it inward, turn it into our subtle body and see, can we open it back up? Can we create that wave-like feeling instead of the particle feeling? And will that transform it for us? Can it help us grow or evolve our understanding spiritually, energetically? So it begins with a recognition of this material. It's funny that we're talking about moving away from the material, but we have to talk about this substance that I've really found is talked about in every culture. Every early culture and mysticism has a word for it. And the most common ones that we still remember are chi or prana. Okay, when someone just says like, I can feel your energy. So you just use even energy. But there's a lot of other ones. There's so this chi is going to be from China and those areas. Prana is around the areas of India. Energies is American. The force, that's also American. The force. Okay. In the Qabalah, so you have Judeo-Christian mysticisms, we use the word ruach. There was a great scientist in the scientist or madman, depending on who you talk to. They burned his books. His name was Wilhelm Reich. He had to flee a couple countries, and they burned all his books and destroyed it. It was totally repressed. He called it orgon. And he was recent. I think he was fairly recent, and he was discovering this in a very scientific way. It was quite interesting. He was running experiments, and he even had this bio. I don't remember what it was called. It was like a square thing that you'd go inside and it could read and increase your bioenergy, and he called it orgon. And then we have in the Norse mythology, so the Vikings, where you get Thor and Wotan, it's called Vril. Ectoplasm is another word. This was, you can also call it the akasha or the ether. I would even go as far to say, and I don't think the Christians who believe in the Holy Ghost would go as far to say, but I would go as far to say that the idea of the Holy Ghost, that this sort of presence that permeates things and can come into one and heal and create divine intervention, the Holy Ghost would even be, I'll capitalize it to not make anybody upset. The Holy Ghost could even be in the same vein, the same substance. Now, what's interesting is that these are the general words. Each culture has a delineation where it gets more and more subtle. It has different qualities as it's more inside a human body, as it's out in deep space, as it's in the interaction right here. This is chi flowing through the universe, communicating. So the way that we're having interrelationship, whether it's vocal or it's really anyway, whether it's a physical interaction, those are different expressions of chi. Whether it's spiritual, it's more and more light, it's subtler, it's higher up, according to how we understand the system, which we're going to go into. And as it has these delineations, and so they each have I'm going to erase this, I can use more space. We'll start at the top. In the Taoist system, when it's in the most spread out, the farthest reaches of space, when it's the most subtle, The most open. We can't even almost observe it. It's unobservable. And in modern physics, I call it dark matter. Now, I'm not saying that dark matter is this far out stuff, but it certainly sounds like it. The Taoists would call it Wu Wei. Wu Wei. And this is untouchable, unobservable, unfoundable. But it's birthless. But it's what everything else is made of. And then in a yogic tradition, there's a lot of different words they have. But we'll just use today para. Para is their word for ultimate. Para Brahman. So Brahman in yoga is usually going to reference the idea of creation. But the ultimate aspect of it, the supreme, is that it has no creator itself. It comes from this place where we can't find. It's unreachable, it's unknowable, but yet it's there somehow. It's the same, almost the exact same idea of what this Wu Wei substance is for the Taoists. In Qabalah, their word for it would be Ein Sof. And these are different densities, again, of limitless beyondness is the translation. Limitless beyondness. And so just sitting here right now, if I said, okay, experience your Ein Sof, I don't know. How do you do that? It's hard to reach. So different techniques were established on how to go from being out in the physical five-sense reality and how to draw back in. And they would even see it as a ladder effect once you decided to draw back in, to get back to this place of Wu Wei, Para Brahman, or Ein Sof. And there are these thresholds that we're going to talk about. These thresholds that kind of keep a person, they're like barriers to entry. They're gates that we have to cross. And there's sort of like holding patterns. Like you're not quite ready to go and understand this sort of, you have stuff you got to work out down here. The three key gates, and they're body. They're in the body. We'll create them now. 1, 2, and 3. If you look at the human body, you can create the rib cage here. Okay, so there's the rib cage. There's my great rendition of it. Now again, the subtle body looks nothing like the physical body. Actually, it does. It's overlaid within at different densities. But the opening meditation, we connected to our heart here. And then right where your diaphragm is, right where your rib cage kind of bows out, you can see that as a gateway, an energetic gateway. And then here's the pelvis, let's say, right? So here's the center of the pelvis, and there's a gateway at the very base. We're going to talk about, that's the root. That's like you've begun a spiritual practice. You've started to recognize that there's energy happening inside of you and it has some impact on the external world. Let me see what I can do to my inner body to maybe help things on the outer world. If you don't make that step, it's like forget about it. You're still just to use our Western the Force and the Matrix, like you're still asleep in the Matrix completely. Then you go to the head, and in the head there's an energy center, okay? And then there's like a couple, and then there's like the crown, and then beyond the crown. And they see it on these thresholds. Let's erase over here. So right now, let's try it. Sit with your feet flat on the floor, and you can sit on your edge of your chair so your back is not supported by the chair. I'm going to draw for you the human spine. And the reason I like it, we're going to talk about these old systems and these old traditions, but what we're going to really try and do is feel in our body right now that it is there. You can tap into it. You can feel these degrees of subtlety. You'll see where you end up. So let me just draw a spine here real quick. Here's the back of the skull. Here's the curve of the neck. Here's the rib cage. My drawing's getting a little better now. More familiar with the anatomy. Here's the low back. Here's the pelvis. Okay, so like the tailbone's in here somewhere. This is line running up. Okay? And here's the skull. Pretty good so far, huh? It's a good body. Okay, here are your leg bones. Across here, 7 chakras, right? 7 chakras. Watch this. So from the tailbone, the base of the tailbone, let's say that's 1. Now we've got right where the sacrum meets the lumbar, meets your low back. If you put your hands on your hips like this, you can feel the bony points of your hip bones, and you go around to the back, you'll feel the base of your lumbar. That's the right where it meets the bony plate of your hips. Okay? Then you have another one right where your rib cage, we talked about that earlier, this gateway here, right at the base of your rib cage. This is right where your rib cage kind of ends. You go to your spine. It's where the curve changes from low back to mid back. Then you have this crux point right in the halfway area. Okay, that's right where the shoulder blades come to a bottom crux, and the heart will be. Then you have the top of the throat, the base of the skull, okay, the center of the skull, and the crown. These are going to be key chakra areas, or key dantians. So in the Taoist system, they have this dantian in the belly, right here. It's like a bowl, and there's this orb of energy, this orb of power. This is one density. It's the lower density. It's about it's the creative fluid. It's your vital fluid. On a subtle level, if they sliced you open, you wouldn't find it. But it's on an energetic level, it is very much there. And it shapes the way we carry ourselves. It'll shape the quality of our skin, the health of our skin. It helps and affects how long we live. And it's very closely associated with exactly where the second chakra would be in the yogic system. So you can think of it at the very base is sort of this bottom of the bowl. If the dantians are they translate as cauldrons. You can think of the bottom of the bowl as the base of the cauldron. And then the center of the bowl is where the energy resides, the creative energy. Same thing with the heart. There's another dantian right in the center of the heart. So now I'm translating from this energy plane to more of a physical body plane. You can think of this as a gateway of entry. And as this chi is turning, again, this subtly, moving from gross to subtle, it has a different respect to the body. So the chi in the center, we'll call it chi, it's like the breath, it's your spirit, it's your ability to actualize your actions, your ability to share with others, the way in which you interact. And that's like very broad. What maybe we'll even tap into later tonight is how to connect with it within ourselves. Then you have another gateway here at the throat, and then you have the mind center. This is called the Shen in Taoist cosmology, and it's somewhere in the relationship between your pituitary and your pineal gland in the chakra system. And then there's always this sense of finding out what's beyond the crown, sort of projecting ourselves out. Many of the systems are always trying to move it only up. But the different densities want it to be in different relationships. Sometimes it's a self-container. It's a loop. It stays within. So right where you are right now, sitting in the chair, close your eyes and feel those 3 centers. You can think of the pelvis like a bowl. And you can experience an orb in the center of that bowl. Drop your breath deeper into that root. Then you feel like a line of connection from the center of that bowl up into the center of the rib cage. And you think of your entire rib cage, again, the bottom of the bowl, and also like a cap, right where your throat begins. It's a cauldron on all sides that insulates the heart fire. Chakra system, we call it the Anahata chakra. It insulates base of the rib cage, top of the rib cage. You feel this little ball of fire in the center of your chest. Maybe you don't feel that ball of fire, that's fine. But you can feel your rib cage. And you can feel whether your rib cage feels full or collapsing. On some level, it's actually better not to feel this little imaginary ball of fire that I just told you about. It's better to feel what you actually feel. That's going to help you on the journey. You don't have to feel the orb, the water, the jing qi in the root of the pelvis. What's better is to just feel your sit bones. Can you just be there? Can you reside there? If you feel yourself wanting to be pulled back up or to have thoughts, it's difficult for you. It's information about how you're relating to your subtle body. And the same thing with the head. You feel the head floating. If your head feels lofty, buoyant, buoy-like, it's often much easier for us to relate to the head center because of the information age we live in. It's easy to let the mind have a bunch of thoughts and to think. To let the chi, the prana, exercise itself, to manifest itself inside this mind center, the shen, than it is to be in the root. Perhaps if we had no TV, no iPhones, and all we did was work in a farm all day, it'd be easier to just sit down at the end of the day and be in our root. As we perceive and study this subtle body, though, we're looking to create balance in ourselves. All three main centers creating a harmony. So your feet, the soles of your feet, are extensions from the root. The soles of your hands are extensions from your heart. They reach out into the field of chi, the density field, at the level of the heart, your hands. That's what they interact with. And you could think of it symbolically as what you create in the world. They're your wings. When you feel your heart, you experience the back of your spine expanding and broadening down into the soles of your hands. You feel the softness of the palm of your hand. That's the field. Same thing, you feel from the root of the body extend down through the knees into the soles of the feet. Same thing. That's the earth you walk on and the way in which you interact with it. You're reaching out from this center, this energy body, touching into the physical world through the feet. And then from the mind, you feel the brain, the center of the mind, floating above the heart. You reach out with your ears, you reach out with your eyes. You could even think of the crown of your head like an antenna. Ideas are swimming around in this subtle field, this akasha. And your DNA code, your particular life sequence, calls in information, calls in ideas. And that information runs down through the body, down through the spine, out into your hands, and into the soles of your feet. Can you feel that now? Take a deep breath and start to feel as though there was a wave of energy coming in through the crown of your head, pushing out into the subtleness of your body wings, rooting down through the core channel, into the hips, and into the soles of your feet.